3D artists versus AI, the future nobody is ready for. Everybody keeps saying AI is going to replace 3D artists. Every week, there's a new headline, a new software, a new generator, a new startup promising to create entire worlds with one sentence. Type your idea here. Generate cinematic scenes instantly. No experience required. And every time one of those videos goes viral, thousands of artists quietly stare at their screens wondering the same thing. Am I wasting my time learning this? Because let's be honest, the fear is real. You spend years learning topology, years learning lighting, years learning animation curves, years learning composition, years learning how materials react to light, years trying to understand why your render looks fake while somebody else's render looks like a movie frame. Then suddenly a person opens a website, types 3 words, and gets applause online. Of course, artists are nervous, but here's the thing nobody talks about. Most people discussing AI replacing artists don't actually understand what artists do, especially 3D artists. People think 3D art is just making pretty images. That's the misunderstanding. 3D artists are problem solvers, engineers, designers, directors, technical thinkers, storytellers, sometimes all at once. Because creating a good 3D scene isn't just about pressing buttons, it's decision making. Thousands of tiny decisions. Where should the light come from? How rough should this material be? Should the edges be sharp or slightly beveled? Does this model look believable from every angle? Will this animation feel heavy or weightless? Should the camera move slower? Should the environment feel cold? Should the shadows be softer? AI can generate, but generation is not the same as understanding, and that difference matters. Right now, the internet is obsessed with speed. Everybody wants things instantly. Instant videos, instant music, instant images, instant content. But real production work doesn't work like social media. A movie studio doesn't just need random images. A game studio doesn't just need random environments. A car commercial doesn't just need random visuals. They need consistency, control, revision, precision, optimization, technical accuracy. That's where the conversation changes, because most AI-generated content still falls apart under pressure. Look closely. You'll see strange geometry, broken structures, impossible reflections, textures melting together, inconsistent details, random design logic. It looks impressive for 5 seconds until you actually need to use it professionally. And that's the part social media skips. Nobody posts the failed generations. Nobody posts the hours fixing AI mistakes. Nobody posts the cleanup process. Nobody posts the technical disasters behind the scenes. They only post the final flashy result. That creates panic, especially for younger artists. A beginner opens TikTok. They see someone generate a futuristic city in 10 seconds. Now suddenly they feel stupid for spending 6 hours modeling one tire. But the truth is, those skills still matter. Actually, they matter even more now, because when everybody can generate images, the real value becomes taste. Taste is rare. Anybody can type prompts. Not everybody can direct. Not everybody can design. Not everybody understands composition. Not everybody understands storytelling. Not everybody knows why one image feels cinematic while another feels cheap. That's the difference. The future probably won't belong to artists who ignore AI, but it also won't belong to people who rely only on AI. The future belongs to artists who understand both. And honestly, that's uncomfortable, because adapting is exhausting. A lot of 3D artists already feel overwhelmed. You're expected to know everything: modeling, sculpting, UV unwrapping, retopology, texturing, rigging, animation, lighting, rendering, compositing, simulation, video editing, sound design, photography principles, color theory, motion graphics. Now AI tools too. Sometimes it feels less like a creative career and more like surviving an endless skill tree. And the internet doesn't help, because online, everybody pretends success happened overnight. You see one amazing render, one viral animation, one insane cinematic sequence. But you don't see the 5 years of ugly projects before it. You don't see the crashes. You don't see the burnout. You don't see the abandoned scenes. You don't see the hard drives full of unfinished work. Every 3D artist has unfinished projects. Entire graveyards of unfinished projects. Folders named Final, Final 2, Final Final, US this one, Real Final. That's the real industry. And honestly, burnout might be a bigger threat than AI. A lot of artists are tired, not lazy. Tired. There's a difference. Creating constantly for algorithms destroys people slowly. Post more, render faster, Upload consistently, stay relevant, learn new tools, follow trends, chase views. Suddenly, creativity becomes pressure. Some artists don't even create for themselves anymore. They create for engagement. That changes the art because the algorithm rewards speed more than depth. A quick, flashy render often performs better than a carefully crafted project that took 3 months. And after a while, artists start questioning everything. Should I even spend time polishing this? Will anybody care? Should I just make AI content instead? That mental battle is happening everywhere right now, especially in 3D, because 3D already requires insane patience. People outside the industry don't understand how long things take. One realistic material can take hours. One clean topology pass can take hours. One simulation can fail 50 times. One render can take an entire night. And after all of that, someone comments, "Cool, what AI did you use?" That sentence alone has probably emotionally damaged thousands of artists because there's a growing problem happening online. People are slowly forgetting the difference between generated content and crafted work. Everything is becoming content, fast, disposable, instant. But craftsmanship still matters. You can feel it when you look at great work. There's intention, attention, detail, a human-made choices there. That's why even in industries filled with advanced technology, the best artists are still valuable. Look at high-end animation studios. Look at VFX houses. Look at game cinematics. They don't just hire people who can generate images. They hire people who can solve visual problems. That skill doesn't disappear overnight. But the entry barrier is changing. That part is true. Years ago, technical skill alone could impress people. Now technology automates more and more technical steps. So what becomes important? Ideas, direction, identity, style, vision. Ironically, AI might actually make originality more valuable, because once everybody can generate polished images, audiences eventually stop caring about polish alone. Then they start searching for personality. That's already happening. People are tired of generic perfection. Perfect skin, perfect renders, perfect lighting, perfect faces, perfect environments. After a while, everything starts looking the same. And when everything looks the same, individuality becomes powerful again. That's why some artists still stand out immediately. You recognize their work instantly, not because it's technically perfect, but because it feels human. And honestly, humans connect with humans, even when technology changes. But there's another side nobody wants to admit. Some jobs probably will disappear. That's reality. Certain repetitive tasks will become automated. Some clients will absolutely choose cheap AI-generated content instead of hiring artists. Some companies will reduce teams. Some industries will shift dramatically. Pretending otherwise helps nobody. Technology has always changed creative industries. Photography changed painting. Digital art changed traditional workflows. CGI changed filmmaking. Streaming changed music. Smartphones changed photography. And now AI is changing creative work again. The people who survive these shifts usually aren't the ones who panic the loudest. They're the ones who adapt fastest. That doesn't mean abandoning artistry. It means evolving, learning how to use new tools without losing creative identity. Because tools have always changed. The pencil was once technology. The camera was once technology. 3D software itself was once terrifying new technology. Imagine explaining Blender to artists in the 1970s. They would think it was science fiction. Now, people treat it like normal. That's how fast industries evolve. And honestly, the next generation of artists will probably grow up with AI the same way current artists grew up with Google, completely normal. That's why the real question isn't, will AI replace artists? The real question is, what kind of artist will still matter in a world full of AI? That's the important conversation, because average work becomes vulnerable first. Generic work, template work, predictable work. But strong creative direction, unique style, deep storytelling, world building, emotional connection, those things are harder to automate. And honestly, audiences still crave emotion, no matter how advanced technology becomes. Think about your favorite movie scenes, your favorite game cinematics, your favorite animations. Most of them stayed with you because of feeling, not because the polygons were impressive. Emotion matters. That's why storytelling artists will probably become even more important, because tools may accelerate creation, but humans still search for meaning, and meaning is harder to generate automatically. But even with all this optimism, the pressure on artists right now is brutal. especially financially. A lot of people online glamorize creative careers. They show the cool setups, the RGB lights, the expensive GPUs, the cinematic renders, but they rarely show the instability, the unpaid revisions, the inconsistent income, the self-doubt, the comparison, the creative exhaustion, the fear of becoming irrelevant. That fear is growing right now. Some artists feel like they're racing technology itself. Every month, there's another breakthrough, another AI video model, another automation tool, another workflow shortcut. And some people quietly wonder, if software keeps improving this fast, what happens to me in 5 years? That thought keeps a lot of artists awake, especially freelancers, because freelancers already live with uncertainty. No guaranteed salary, no guaranteed clients, no guaranteed stability. Now add AI disruption on top of that. It's understandable why people are anxious. But there's another reality most people ignore. Most clients still struggle to communicate simple creative ideas. Seriously, creative communication is hard. A client says, I want it cinematic. Okay, what does cinematic mean? Dark lighting, wide lenses, orange highlights, slow camera movement, shallow depth of field, emotional atmosphere, epic scale? Different people mean completely different things. That's where artists become translators. Good artists translate vague human ideas into visual reality. That skill is extremely valuable, and it's not just technical, it's psychological. You're interpreting emotion, mood, expectation, identity. That's why creative industries are messy, because humans are messy, and humans don't always know what they want until they see it. AI doesn't magically remove that complexity. In fact, sometimes it increases it, because now people can generate endless options instantly. That creates another problem: decision paralysis. Too many possibilities. When everything becomes possible, direction becomes harder. That's why strong art direction becomes more valuable. Somebody still has to decide, this is the right choice. That's taste. Taste is becoming the real currency, not just technical ability. And honestly, taste takes years to develop. There's no shortcut. You build taste through observation, through failure, through experimentation, through studying films, architecture, photography, design, composition, lighting, storytelling. That's why some renders feel expensive even when technically simple. The artist understands visual language. That understanding matters. But social media often hides that reality. It makes everything look effortless, especially with AI content exploding everywhere. Suddenly, timelines are filled with impossible visuals, hyper-realistic characters, cinematic environments, fantasy worlds, infinite creativity. At first, it feels inspiring, then overwhelming, because artists start comparing their unfinished reality to everybody else's polished highlights. That comparison destroys motivation. And honestly, comparison has probably killed more creative dreams than lack of talent. Some people quit too early, not because they were bad, because they thought they were supposed to improve faster. But 3D art has one of the steepest learning curves in creative industries. You can spend months learning one area alone. Lighting itself is an entire discipline. Animation is an entire discipline. Hard surface modeling is an entire discipline. Character sculpting is an entire discipline. And yet, online, beginners expect themselves to master everything immediately. That pressure is dangerous, especially now, because AI has accelerated expectations. People expect instant quality, instant realism, instant results. But mastery still takes time. There's no AI shortcut for artistic maturity that develops through repetition, experience, mistakes, observation. That's why older artists still carry value, not because they know secret buttons, but because they've developed instincts. They know when something feels wrong, even before they can explain why. That intuition is powerful. And honestly, AI might actually increase demand for strong creative leaders, because as content generation becomes easier, content quality control becomes harder. Imagine millions of people generating visuals constantly. Who decides what's actually good? That's where experienced artists matter. Curators, directors, designers, people with visual judgment. And that's probably where the industry is heading. Less emphasis on pure technical labor, more emphasis on creative decision making. But adapting emotionally is still difficult. A lot of artists feel betrayed by technology, especially artists who sacrificed years learning difficult workflows. Imagine spending 5 years mastering complex techniques only for software to suddenly automate part of it. That hurts. Of course it hurts. Some people feel like the value of their struggle is disappearing. But honestly, the struggle still shaped them, even if tools change, because learning difficult things builds creative thinking, problem solving, patience, discipline, observation. Those traits still matter. And honestly, most great artists were never valuable only because of software knowledge. Software changes constantly. The artists who last are usually the ones who understand fundamentals: light, shape, composition, movement, emotion, story. Those fundamentals survive technological shifts, always. And there's another thing nobody mentions enough. Most people trying AI tools eventually realize something surprising. Generating ideas is easy. Finishing projects is hard, very hard. Actually, finishing something polished requires discipline. That's why so many people start creative hobbies, but few stay consistent. Consistency is rare, especially in 3D, because the process is mentally exhausting. You spend hours alone, fixing tiny details most people will never notice. Edge flow, normals, UV seams, texture stretching, shadow artifacts, render noise, clipping issues, simulation glitches, tiny invisible battles. And sometimes after working for 12 hours, the project still looks bad. That's emotionally difficult, especially for perfectionists. A lot of artists quietly struggle with perfectionism. Nothing feels finished. Nothing feels good enough. You improve, then suddenly older work looks terrible. That cycle never really ends. But maybe that dissatisfaction is part of what pushes artists forward, because creativity is weird. Artists chase visions they can barely explain. Sometimes you know exactly how something should feel in your head, but translating it into reality feels impossible. That gap between imagination and execution frustrates artists constantly. AI doesn't remove that gap completely, because even with generation tools, knowing what you actually want still matters. Direction matters. And honestly, a lot of people underestimate how difficult direction is. Making choices is hard. That's why teams still need art directors, creative directors, lead designers, senior artists. Somebody has to shape the vision. And as AI tools become more powerful, strong vision becomes even more important. Otherwise, everything becomes noise. And right now, the internet is drowning in noise. Endless images, endless videos, endless content. Attention spans are collapsing. Artists spend weeks creating things people scroll past in 2 seconds. That reality hurts too, especially when projects are deeply personal. A lot of artists attach emotion to their work, so when content underperforms online, it feels personal. Even though algorithms are unpredictable, that's another dangerous issue modern artists face. Self-worth becoming connected to analytics, views, likes, comments, shares. Suddenly creativity becomes numbers, and numbers can destroy confidence, especially because social media rewards trends more than originality sometimes. Artists see low-effort viral content outperform carefully crafted projects. That creates resentment, and honestly, understandable resentment, because effort and reward are not always connected online. A masterpiece can disappear unnoticed. A meme can explode overnight. That unpredictability emotionally drains creators. Some artists stop creating because they feel invisible, but visibility and value are not always the same thing. That's important to remember. Some of the most skilled artists online barely get attention, while some viral creators are simply better entertainers. And entertainment is its own skill. That's another shift happening now. Artists increasingly need personality, not just portfolio quality. People follow humans, not just renders. That's why behind the scenes content performs well. Time lapses, process videos, commentary, breakdowns. Audiences love seeing humans create because the human process itself is fascinating. Watching somebody slowly build a world from nothing still feels magical. And honestly, that magic matters, even in an AI-driven future. Because humans are emotional creatures. We connect with effort, growth, journey, struggle. That's why sports documentaries work, music documentaries work, creative documentaries work. People love witnessing dedication, and 3D art requires enormous dedication, especially when working alone. Independent artists do everything themselves: modeling, lighting, animation, editing, marketing, posting, networking, client communication, sometimes all while dealing with financial pressure. That's why burnout is so common. And honestly, AI conversations sometimes make burnout worse because artists feel pressured to work faster constantly. Faster production, faster learning, faster adaptation, faster content. But creativity doesn't always function well under constant pressure. Sometimes good ideas need time, observation, experimentation, reflection. But modern internet culture hates slowness. Everything is optimized for speed. That changes art. And maybe that's the deeper fear artists have. Not just losing jobs, losing humanity in the creative process itself. Because when everything becomes automated and optimized, something emotional can disappear. Imperfection, experimentation, happy accidents, human weirdness. Some of the greatest creative breakthroughs happen through mistakes, unexpected outcomes, technical limitations, creative improvisation. Human creativity is messy, and maybe that messiness is important because perfect efficiency doesn't always create memorable art. Sometimes flaws create identity. That's why old films still feel special. Old games still feel special. Old animations still feel special. You can feel human fingerprints on them. And honestly, audiences still crave that authenticity, even if they can't explain it. That's why handcrafted work still stands out, not because it's technically flawless, but because it carries intention. And intention is powerful, especially now, because modern audiences are overwhelmed with synthetic content. Eventually, people start craving things that feel real again. You can already see signs of that. People appreciating practical effects, traditional craftsmanship, handmade aesthetics, organic imperfections. Humanity becomes valuable when artificial perfection becomes normal. That's why artists shouldn't underestimate themselves. The ability to create emotionally meaningful work still matters, probably always will, but survival will still require adaptation. That part cannot be ignored. Artists who refuse to learn new workflows may struggle, not because technology hates them, but because industries evolve. And honestly, adaptability has always been part of survival. The artists who thrive long term are usually curious. They experiment, they evolve, they stay flexible. Not because they abandon identity, but because they understand tools are temporary. Vision lasts longer. That's why some artists remain influential across decades despite technological change, because their core creativity transcends software. Software updates, trends shift, platforms die, but compelling ideas survive. And honestly, the world still needs compelling ideas, especially now, because technology alone doesn't automatically create meaning. It creates possibility. Humans create meaning. That distinction matters a lot. And maybe that's why people still admire artists despite automation fears. Artists give shape to emotion, fear, hope, loneliness, wonder, excitement, nostalgia, dreams. That emotional translation is deeply human. And honestly, humans will probably always crave emotional connection, no matter how advanced technology becomes. But there's still one uncomfortable truth left. A lot of artists are scared to admit they're scared, because online culture rewards confidence. Everybody pretends they're adapting perfectly. Everybody pretends they're unbothered. Everybody pretends they've figured out the future. Most people haven't. The entire industry is uncertain right now. Even companies are uncertain. Nobody fully knows how AI will reshape creative work over the next decade. Some predictions are exaggerated, some are underestimated, but uncertainty itself creates anxiety, especially for young creators trying to choose careers. Some people genuinely wonder, should I even learn 3D now? And honestly, yes, but learn it differently. Don't just learn software. Learn visual thinking, learn storytelling, learn design, learn cinematography, learn psychology, learn communication, learn branding, learn emotion, because software alone becomes replaceable faster. Creative perspective is harder to replace. And honestly, artists with strong perspectives will probably become even more valuable because generic content is becoming infinite. Infinite content creates another problem: attention scarcity. People can only consume so much, so eventually audiences become more selective. They search for creators who feel distinct. That's why building artistic identity matters now more than ever. Not copying trends endlessly, not chasing algorithms endlessly, developing a recognizable creative voice. That takes time. And honestly, time is something many creators feel guilty about now. Everything online pressures speed, but meaningful growth is usually slow, painfully slow sometimes, especially in 3D. You improve gradually, almost invisibly. Then one day you compare current work to old work and suddenly realize how far you've come. That journey matters. And honestly, AI cannot replace the human journey behind art. People connect to stories, the artist who struggled, learned, failed, improved, persisted. That narrative itself has emotional value because humans admire dedication, always have. And maybe that's the biggest thing technology can't automate: Human meaning, not just images, meaning. Because images without meaning become forgettable eventually. But meaningful work stays with people. That's why some scenes from movies live in our minds forever. Some game moments become unforgettable. Some animations emotionally destroy entire generations. Not because technology created them, because humans infused them with emotion. And honestly, that's probably what the future still belongs to. Not the fastest creators, not the loudest creators, not the people generating endless content mindlessly, but the people who still know how to make audiences feel something. That skill remains powerful, even now, especially now. So maybe AI isn't the end of artists. Maybe it's the end of average creativity. Maybe it forces artists to become deeper, more intentional, more emotionally intelligent, more creatively distinct. Maybe that pressure creates stronger artists eventually. Or maybe it creates entirely new kinds of artists. Artists who blend technology with human storytelling. Artists who direct machines instead of competing with them. Artists who focus less on repetitive labor and more on vision. That future is possible too. And honestly, creativity has survived every technological revolution so far. It changed, but it survived because humans will always want stories, worlds, dreams, escapes, meaning. That hunger never disappears. Technology only changes how those things are created. And maybe right now, we're simply living through another transition, a messy one, a scary one, an uncertain one. But transitions always feel chaotic while they're happening. People fear the unknown, artists especially, because artists often build identity around creation itself. So when creation changes, identity feels threatened. That emotional reaction is understandable. But maybe the goal isn't protecting old workflows forever. Maybe the goal is protecting the human soul inside creativity, curiosity, emotion, vision, meaning. Those things matter. And honestly, they probably always will. So if you're a 3D artist watching all this happen in real time, feeling overwhelmed, feeling uncertain, feeling behind, you're not alone. Almost everybody in creative industries is trying to figure this out right now. The difference is, some people are adapting with fear, and some are adapting with curiosity. Curiosity usually survives longer, because fear freezes people. Curiosity pushes people forward. And maybe that's the mindset artists need most right now. Not blind optimism, not denial. Curiosity, learning, experimenting, evolving, without losing the human reason they started creating in the first place. Because at the end of the day, most artists didn't start creating because it was safe. They started because imagination felt powerful. Because bringing impossible ideas into reality felt magical. And honestly, that feeling still matters, even in a world full of AI. Maybe especially in a world full of AI. Because when machines can generate almost anything, truly human creativity becomes unforgettable. And that's probably what the future will reward most. Not just content, not just speed, human vision. The kind that makes people stop scrolling, the kind that makes people feel something, the kind that reminds audiences there's still a real person behind the screen. And maybe that's the real future of 3D art. Not humans versus AI, but humans learning how to remain human while technology changes everything around them.